quickly going through my winners and losers, and that might trigger some thought process. But my first win is obviously got to be the Buffalo Bills. Massive primetime victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. And you'd have to say right now, if we're looking at the Super Bowl, I've still probably got the Chiefs as the favorite to be the AFC participant. But if we stop the season right now, Buffalo are definitely the number one seed. And the issue is, even if I think the Chiefs might be better at that time of the year, if they keep going with this rate, both teams, like the Bills and the Chiefs, if they keep going at this level, the Bills are going to be locking in that number one spot. They're going to get that week off, and they're going to have three home playoff games, or two home playoff games. I can't count, but yes, two home playoff games leading into the Super Bowl, which would be a big benefit for them, and could be the difference between them winning or losing the AFC Championship game. So that's huge for them. They look like they've really married up their last two seasons for the best possible combination, really. Like, they've got the defense from 2019 that was one of the best in the comp. They've got the offense from 2020 that was one of the best in the comp. They've merged those two together, and they're playing unbelievable football right now. Apart from a week one loss to the Steelers, it's been a pretty much flawless season since then. They forced 4 turnovers from the Chiefs in this one, which is very, very rare. The Chiefs have been pretty turnover prone so far this year compared to normal, but still, the defense was definitely applying a lot of pressure. They had 8.1 yards per play in attack compared to the Chiefs, who only averaged 5, so that's just a complete demolition. Not even close, as the scoreboard did end up suggesting. And for the rest of the season, their strength of schedule is the second easiest league-wide. So, right now, that number one seed is looking very, very good. And a home playoff run could definitely be on the cards for the Buffalo Bills, which would be huge for them and the franchise. I just think the way they've built that roster is so impressive. There's obviously Josh Allen's a very, very quarterback, but there's no one absolute star. It's not like Green Bay, where there's Aaron Rodgers, who, if he plays bad, the team goes from exceptional to pretty awful pretty quickly. So I just love the way they've built the team. They've got 22, 30 just really, really solid players, some exceptional players. And as I mentioned, like, they're not relying on one player. Like, I'm not really that worried if they have one injury obviously, like Josh Allen getting injured, but touch wood. But I don't think like one or two injuries are really going to change the way that team plays, where another team might really struggle to cover those injuries. They've got really good depth. They've also got the running game going this year, which they haven't in previous years. Singletary in past years hasn't really been able to get it going himself. So the combination this year of a second-year Zach Moss combined with Singletary with a better O-line, they're starting to run the ball really, really well. Allen's running well himself. So, right now, Buffalo look good on pretty much all fronts, and they look like a scary proposition for anyone to come up against. And you would have to say, like, it's good that they've got that running game and a good defense, because when it gets cold in Buffalo, it might even snow, they're just going to be a scary opposition. My second biggest winner is probably a road one, but I've got the Philadelphia Eagles. They had a huge comeback win over the Panthers, held the Carolina offense to 18 points, which has been pretty good to start the season. At one point, they were, according to the ESPN Gamecast, they were at a 91.4% chance of losing the game. It was in Carolina as well, just adds to the impressive feat. Hurts didn't have a very good day at all. I think he had a QB rating of like 30, but they still got the win, which is important. It's important for a team to have multiple ways of winning this, and their defense got the job done on this occasion. And I'm not the biggest fan of Philly, but if their defense can keep playing like this, their attack has enough big play potential that they can produce some upsets like this one. They restricted Darnold to an 18.4 QB rating, which I think is one of the worst you can get. Picked him off 3 times, and they held the run game to 3.6 yards per play, which is pretty hard to do against the Panthers. So, big win for the Eagles. And look, I'm not the highest on them, but the NFC wildcard situation right now is looking very, very messy, obviously, with Russell Wilson's injury. The Niners aren't looking great. The NFC East teams, apart from the Eagles, don't look great either. Washington and the Giants are pretty bad. They've just beaten the Panthers, who would be one of their rivals for this. The Saints look decent. And then the NFC North teams, the Bears and the Minnesota Vikings, don't look great either. So I think if there's a team like Philadelphia who can really step up, they could definitely make the playoffs and go on a bit of a run but for the rest of the season, because I'm pretty sure their rest of schedule's not that bad compared to the people in that wildcard race. It'd be a ridiculous achievement considering I predict them to win 6 games coming into the year, but I think they are playing quite well. Next up, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had 391 total yards offense against the Denver Broncos. Big Ben averaged 16 yards per completion, which is just a massive improvement on the last really 18 months. Their offense has been struggling pretty much that whole time, and they've been averaging very low completion rate numbers because they just haven't really. I don't know whether the O line's been poor or whether they've just not trusted Big Ben, but yeah, they've just been a lot of short passes, a lot of check downs, and it's good to see them airing it out a bit more. He only got sacked once, so clearly the O-line did have a lot better game, and they averaged 4.2 yards per carry, which doesn't sound immense, but considering they were averaging about 3 yards per carry the last couple of weeks, it's a big improvement for that O-line and the whole team. Keeping the Broncos to 19 points is pretty much what we expect from this defense, really. We expect them to keep teams below 25 points on a regular basis, and really their ceiling just comes up down to whether their offense is good enough to put up more than that. So, and they showed this game that they definitely can do that. So, yeah, I haven't been high on the Steelers in the first month of the season, but if their defense can play like this every week and their offense can, play good 2 weeks out of 3, all of a sudden they might just rack up enough wins to feature in the playoffs. The Broncos went 2 for 12 on third down, so that's really where the game was won and lost for either side. Brilliant third down defense from the Steelers, but that is pretty poor conversion from Teddy and his offense. Losers, got to start with the Kansas City Chiefs. I know they came up against a very good Buffalo Bills team, but they got annihilated at home, and there's no two ways you can say that this is just factual. I'm not too worried about them, as I mentioned. I would still have them as my favorite to make the Super Bowl from the AFC, but they're just not playing good right now, and in particular, their defense is beginning to be a bit of a worry because in previous years, at times throughout the season, their defense has been an issue, and they've sort of always got it just good enough for the playoffs, but at this stage, it's going to have to take a drastic change. And they do have time to fix it. There's, I think, 12 weeks left in the regular season, so that's a long time. But the issue for them now is they're likely not going to be getting that number 1 seed, and they're not going to have that home advantage that they have had in previous years, which, might be a bit of a shock to the system for them. They also have the second hardest schedule remaining, so further emphasizing on that fact that they're probably not going to get much home advantage in the playoffs. Who knows? They could even be a wild card team with the way the Chargers are playing right now, which would just be ridiculous. And something I wanted to know, I'm not really a biggest believer in these sort of patterns and these trends, but it's something I did notice last year. There's a bit of a curse of a Super Bowl loser. 4 of the last 5 Super Bowl losers have gone on to miss the playoffs in one of the following 2 seasons. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the Chiefs are going to miss playoffs, but just saying there does seem to be a bit of a hangover from losing a Super Bowl because, you sort of gone so far yet come away with not much. I know winning the AFC is still very impressive, but people always say there's a hangover for winning the Super Bowl, and maybe it's actually a bigger hangover to lose it. Next up, we have the Raiders. Obviously, don't want to get too much into it, but the biggest reason they're in the losers this week probably has to be John Gruden getting sacked for his emails that were found to have discriminatory language towards a lot of people. It was obviously originally just the one email about the NFL Players Association president, and then an investigation found there was a whole bunch of them. There's rumors that there's a petition to get it released, which would be, I don't know, I guess it would probably. I actually don't know whether that would be good or not. It would slam him for the rest of his career, but he might deserve it based on what was said. So, yeah, it's a tough situation because we don't really know the details, but that is the letter of the law that he has been sacked, and by the sounds of it, that does seem justified. However, what's even worse for the Raiders to consolidate that L is that they lost to the Bears at home, scored one touchdown only. I know it's a good Bears defense, but this offense looked like one of the best in the first 3 weeks, and they did this exact same thing last year. They played really well in the first 3 weeks. People got excited, and then they just went back to being the same old Raiders who are probably going to win 8 or 9 games and miss out on the playoffs. So, yeah, this is definitely a concern for the Raiders. They're going forward without a head coach. Well, they've got the assistant coach stepping up, but you know what I mean. And they're not playing great. They haven't played great the last 2 weeks. They averaged only 4.3 yards per play, which is just really, really poor. And yeah, their home field is not looking as intimidating as it did at the start of the year. 3.2 yards per carry on the ground, so they really weren't getting much going in the ground game, and they had 188 yards from 22 completions, so around 9 yards per completion, so they weren't getting much going on the ground. They were being very conservative in the passing game, and they also gave away 10 penalties, so yeah, look, not much really went right for them. They did only keep the Bears to 20 points, so I guess the defense is still playing well, but their offense right now is definitely a concern because last week against the Chargers, I think they only scored 14 points as well, which is not going to be good enough down the stretch if they were thinking about making a little wild card appearance. Finally, the Seahawks are my third loser. Obviously, Russell Wilson out for around probably 6 weeks. There's been reports saying he's out for a month, out for 8 weeks, so we'll just go half and say 6 weeks. They are 2-3 as well. They don't have an easy strength of schedule coming up, and they sit last in their division right now. So that's really just enough to paint the picture for the Seahawks. It's not looking good at all. I think right now the storyline of Russell Wilson's looking ever more likely as this like they're sort of stagnating this franchise really. The last 3 years hasn't been much progression. If anything, it's been regression. So yeah, really disappointing. Russell Wilson said he will only stay if they improve what's around him, and the defense has gotten worse. The weapons haven't improved, and if he, like, unless they, I don't know what could really sway him, but if that was really his decision making process, he wanted things to improve around him. There's absolutely nothing to suggest that he should stay. And I'll be honest, just from a fan's point of view, I'd like to see him leave. I'd like to see him go somewhere else, see what happens. Their defense is just really, really poor right now. And they're a weird team because you look at them and, like, you compare them to the Rams, you compare them to the Bucks, you compare them to the Chiefs. And you sort of, like, question how are they on the same salary cap because they just don't seem to have as many good players. And I know that sounds stupid, but, like, I was looking at their salary cap and there's not really seemingly anyone who's like on a massive contract that doesn't deserve it. But yeah, right now there just seems to be a lot of people who are maybe earning a little bit more than they should be, and that's all that added up is not working well for these Seahawks. And in the past, their defense hasn't been great, but their offense has sort of made up for it, and it was not playing as well this year. The only thing in their favor right now is the fact that, as I mentioned, for Philadelphia, there's not many NFC wildcard challenges. Like, it's not looking like a very strong conference with very strong candidates. But yeah, for Geno Smith to play for 6 weeks against some tough defenses as well, if they make the playoffs from here, it'll be a pretty miraculous recovery for Pete Carroll's men. All right, awards of the week. My NFC Player of the Week is going to go to Devontae Adams, 206 receiving yards from 11 catches. Was part of a Packers team that had a big win in overtime over the Bengals, had one touchdown, which that touchdown was the last touchdown that the Packers scored at the end of the first half. So, yeah, this guy's just unstoppable, really. At this point, he's probably getting double teamed pretty much every snap, and he still managed to find 206 receiving yards. I know he's getting passes from probably the best quarterback in the comp, but he is also himself probably the best receiver in the comp. So, yeah, it's just a nasty duo to come up against for any defense, and it's really hard to hold him to anything less than 10 catches, 150 yards at this point. He's an absolute freak, and he just can get open in any situation. He was obviously part of the whole field goal fiasco. I think there was 5 missed field goals, Crosby missed 3, McPherson missed 2. It's not McPherson. Think about what you are saying, Americans. It is McPherson. But anyway, Devontae Adams, NFC Player of the Week. Also, shout out to Tom Brady, who had a blinder against the Dolphins. AFC Player of the Week, I've gone with Lamar Jackson, 37 completions from 43 attempts, 442 passing yards for a man who apparently is not good at passing the ball. 4 passing touchdowns, 62 rushing yards. Led the Ravens to one of the craziest comebacks I've seen. Colts were up to a 98.4% chance of winning. That's just outrageous. Like, you think about that game gets played 100 times, and the algorithms are saying the Ravens win 1.5 times. So, yeah, the fact that we got to see them do it is just ridiculous. They were down 22-3 at that point. After Lamar's fumble in the third quarter, he went 4 for 4 on touchdown drives, and yeah, it was just absolutely incredible comeback from him. And he looks like a bit of a new man this year. The first year, he was pretty much just a running back. Last year, they tried to convert him into more of a passer with running back like threat, but the passing game just wasn't there. And this year, they look like they've successfully converted him for the better, and he looks like an absolute weapon right now. I have had to move inside. Not sure if the podcast went a bit weird there in the last couple of minutes. My laptop overheated. It was too hot, apparently, which we love to see. I was up to Offensive Rookie of the Week, which I will give to Najee Harris. Absolutely had a blinder for the Steelers, as he has sort of all year, really. He's been playing pretty well in a poor offense. But this week, the offense was better, and he was a big reason behind that. He was 122 yards from 23 carries with 1 touchdown, 20 yards from 2 receptions as well in the air. He was part of a big win. Didn't even finish the game, actually, with cramps, and they actually lowered his snap count, which was quite interesting, but I reckon that might have proved beneficial. There's not many guys, realistically, who can play, 85 plus, and the amount of running back injuries there are, I don't actually think it's worth it. So I think you actually get increased efficiency when you decrease some of their snap count. So I think that's smart footy from the Steelers coaching panel. The honourable mentions, Kadarius Toney. Obviously, he's probably the main one, but the reason I didn't go with him was the fact that he got disqualified at the end of the game. Also, he was part of a loss, so I like to give it to people who were part of a win. Jamar Chase, same thing, part of a loss. Kyle Pitts, he had a really, really good breakout game as well. He was close. And Davis Mills actually had a pretty good performance against an impressive New England Patriots defense. Defensive Player of the Week, Darius Slay, for me, not really that close. Derwin James and Everson Griffin were both good. Derwin James, however, he was part of a team that conceded about 42 points, but he had a good individual game. And Everson Griffin was good as well. But Darius Slay up against the Panthers had 1 tackle for a loss, 2 interceptions, played 100% of defensive snaps, held DJ Moore to 42 yards, which has been a rare feat this year. Everyone's been conceding about 120 to him a game, and they won the game eventually, and a lot of it was off the back of those 2 crucial interceptions. So, yeah, Darius Slay for me back to his prime form, where he was one of the best cornerbacks in the competition. He was our Defensive Player of the Week for this one.
It's a miracle! Oh, yeah! What about that one? No! Unbelievable! Balotelli! Aguero! Crowd cheers. Here's Siddle.